What's going on, guys? Welcome to Rabbit's Used Cars. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I always thought it'd be good content. You know, everybody knows I've been in the car business 2/3 of my life. I sum it up like this for people all the time, because I love to be a straight shooter. You don't have to be a con man to be in the car business. You don't have to be a con man or lie to be successful. It's not about that. Unfortunately, there's a stigma with this business. And, there's a few guys in the bunch, they're probably shady characters. And by saying that, something that you got to understand is to learn the tricks. Sometimes you got to play with these shady characters and befriend some of these shady characters and be buddies with them, and I've got a lot of friends in the car business, and I've got a lot of old school friends. I like to think I'm classically trained in this, and there's very little that I haven't seen in one way, shape, or another in my career. And this is one that I think a lot of you new guys, because I have so many guys that are getting in the business, getting their feet wet, that I think this is kind of like a PSA. One thing that I love to tell people about, I love telling you all these old stories and all the old school things. One thing in particular that's always kind of been taboo that no one wants to talk about, due to technology and newer cars and things like that, has gotten a lot harder over the years. It's cutting odometers. You don't even hear it anymore. Used to, you got to understand, in the 80s and 90s, it was common practice. I mean, literally half the cars that were sold had that cluster messed with. They wound that clock back just a little bit, because you got to think about it. There's a big difference between a 100,000 mile car and a 60,000 mile car or a 70,000 mile car. Even a 90,000 mile car. You got to think it just sounds better. I mean, at the end of the day, 10,000 miles makes no difference in condition, but it just sounds better. I got this car, it's got 100,000 miles on it. Or I got this clear little cream puff with 90,000 miles on it. It just sounds better. Just like 14.9 sounds better than 15,000. In your head, it sounds better. These guys have gotten smart. And I've heard horror stories over the years, of guys cutting odometers and things like that. You got to think about it. Well, then, late 90s, early 2000s, we had a service come out, and it was really popular. It was really, 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 really popular. And this was going to be the end of cutting odometers, because this little fox was going to stop it all. He was a thorn in the side. And then, of course, technology. You got to think about it. The crooks get sneakier. Well, technology has to get even sneakier to keep up. You got to stay ahead of them. Digital odometers. Now your computers are recording mileages. You got to think about it. There's just no such thing as, putting the numbers back. You got to cover your bases when you're doing shady things. You got to think about it. This is committing a crime. This is actually a felony. But Carfax, it says actual mileage. Actual mileage. The Fox says so, so it's got to be right. And you got to think about it, of course, all your new cars, you don't have to worry about rolling odometers back in those. That's virtually became a thing in the past in new cars. And I'm not saying there's some techie guy out there right now in his mama's basement that's digitally, through the power of a computer and a laptop and whatever doing it. But I'm just saying it's not as common because of technology. There's one problem. All those 80s and 90s cars back in the day, well, guess what? Those are the new classics, I'll be honest with you. Hell, that's a third of what I sell now. Box body Mustangs, OBS trucks, third gen trailer park Camaros. These are the cars that guys want now. C4 Corvettes. And I just, I kind of want to tell you a story. I feel like it's an instructional, kind of at the same time. And warning, I do not do this. I do not promote this. I do not in any way, shape, or form saying this is right. I'm showing you, for example, because a lot of people are really funny about gauge clusters. You know, like, oh, we don't want to mess with that. And then there's a lot of people like, well, whatever, you know. This is the thing you got to understand with a Carfax. It only knows what it's told. Think about it when you were a little kid and your parents told you about Santa Claus or, you know, the Easter Bunny or, you know, whatever, the boogeyman. You believed it because that's what you were told. Now, you grew up and you realize that your parents were lying to you. But, you know, it's all in good fun, whatever. So you got this Carfax. You know, you're going out and you're finding, you got to think about it, with the popularity of the 80s and 90s cars now, these new classics, you know, and Radwood and everything, all these festivals and all this stuff. You know, these cars have become, you know, that cool niche classic, you know, and you got a lot of the guys that grew up in the 80s and 90s now buying these cars because they wanted them back then. Man, I found this awesome car. I pulled the Carfax on it and it says, you know, the miles are right. And it's only showing blah, blah, blah miles. And it's this, or is it? Because you got to think about it. Carfax, much like you with your parents when you were growing up, only knows what it's told. Aha. And, you know, there's lots of things you can do to look at the mileage on a car and kind of give you a rough idea, especially the lower the miles, obviously the condition. You know, you look at little things, you know, look at the steering wheel for wear. You know, of course, the brake pedal pad trick, you know, popping oil caps off and looking at the back of the oil cap and see if it's got a lot of oil residue on it. You know, things like that. Telltale signs that the mileage might be higher. You know, might be driven a little more than they let on. And you can look for all these things, but you got to understand, by the time you heard about these tricks, they already had an answer for that. You know, Dorman, Stant, they make all these parts. You can buy new oil caps. You can buy new brake pedal pads. Hell, go on eBay. You can buy nice steering wheels. You can buy reproduction steering wheels. They'll look just like whatever. You know, well, the seat might be broke down. You know, well, upholstery shops across the country fix seats every day. And there again, just because like the bolster on a seat's broke down, necessarily mean, you know, it's fraud. Might have been a big guy that owned the car, dragging in and out of it, whatever. I mean, I've seen cars with 50,000 miles on them, legit, that look like they had 200,000 on them. And then I've seen cars with 200,000 miles that look like they only had 50,000 miles on them. That's going to bring us into our story today. And I'm going to teach you a little bit as we go. This is kind of like a learning thing. And keep in mind, warning, once again, I want to say this again. This is just strictly for demonstration purposes. I don't do things like this as a rule. You know, what I love about the internet is I have all my internet friends, almost 30,000 of them, sending me links to cars for sale all the time. Stuff on Marketplace, stuff on Craigslist, stuff on OfferUp, and wherever, God knows where else. You know, C4 Corvettes, Camaros, OBS trucks. Man, I found this low mileage this, or I found this, or I found that, and I love it. Yeah, I'm an older guy, but I got a pretty good memory on me. I remember things pretty good, especially cars. And, you know, you see things that catch your eye that are an oddity. I was on the hunt a few months back for a really nice third-gen Camaro. I wanted an early IROC, you know, 86, 87, 88. Tune port, 350, automatic, or even a 305 5-speed car. But I wanted a nice IROC. And this really, really nice convertible IROC, which all those cars were conversion cars, really popped up. And the miles was stupid low on it. And the car was really nice. And this little bright red convertible IROC pops up. The miles were like 160,000, but it was super clean. Just a super clean car. You know, and I saw it and I liked the car just based out of pictures. But that mileage, you know, you got to think about it. This thing's got, you know, 160,000 miles on it. It's never really been fooled with. You got to think about it. This is a Gen 1 small block, basically, with fuel injection. You know, 106,000 miles, that's how much it's wore out. You know, I mean, it may be running all right now, but it's not going to run good for another 30,000 miles. You know, these are old style small blocks, not like your new Vortex or even LS stuff that can run for hundreds of thousands of miles. Obviously, technology's helped in that end of it too over the years. So let me stop that story to tell you another story. I've got a Corvette that I have made more money off of over the years. I have owned this car for 10 years, robbing parts off of it. I actually bought it from a dope man. It has no title, and it is the tackiest 86 Corvette you ever laid eyes on. This car has been the best money maker car for me because it was totally complete and in relatively good shape. I didn't ask no questions. I was looking for a parts car. I bought it. And this thing's been sitting behind my shop for years. And whenever I get a C4 Corvette that's got a broke clip or it needs, a headlight motor or needs something, I just walk right back to the back to my little parts vet and I'll rob it off of it. And I have robbed parts off this car for years. Literally, I have probably saved myself $20,000 over the years with C4 Corvettes by having this one car in the bag. So I'm gonna give you a little history lesson though. C4 Corvette. This is an 84 through 88 Corvette gauge cluster. Automatic, manual, doesn't matter. They're all the same, 84 to 88. Little history lesson for you though. Little history lesson. So you see this gauge cluster right here. Do you know what it was originally designed for? You got to think about it. In 83, when they came out with, the C4 Vet, and then of course it rolled out in 84, this was high tech, a digital dash like this. And everybody's thinking, man, General Motors designed this killer dash for it. Actually, General Motors didn't design this. This was actually designed by a tank manufacturer and was originally intended to be the gauge cluster in an Army tank. The reason being is one, it lights up at night nice so you can see it well. Think about tanks are dark inside. So that's kind of neat. What does a C4 Corvette do that most other American cars didn't do? By the flip of a switch, it would go to the metric system. So it read in kilometers. It measured everything on the metric system, or you could flip it over and go standard. So they liked that. So depending on where it was at, and they thought it was kind of give a cool Euro vibe to the Vet. So they bought this cluster design from this tank manufacturer. Boom, we got the dash for the C4 Corvette, 84 through 88. So little C4 knowledge for you. Like I said, I got my little parts vet, and I love this thing because I'll walk back in the kudzu and I'll rob a part or two off, here and there, whatever you might need, a little clip. Hell, I've sold the wiring harness out of it, sold the motor out of it, sold the seats, interior door panels. Like I said, my old dope buddy friend that hooked me up with his vet that has a very questionable place where it came from. I don't know, I don't want to know, don't care to know where it came from. Sold the wheels and tires off of it. Just a money maker car. Whenever somebody needs something for a C4 Corvette, I think about it, I'm like, hell, I got that in stock, Good Lord, what do we have here? So first, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, this Corvette is showing 60,913 miles on the odometer. You're like, well, I don't know anything about this. Well, I'm going to teach you something. And we just took the back off of it. Very common with C4 Corvettes also is that the stepper motor goes out. And you say, Rob, what's a stepper motor? Well, any gauge cluster you look at from the back side has a stepper motor. And basically what that does is turns the odometer. It's a little electric motor that keeps up with it. And that's what actually runs the odometer. These little stepper motors, I'll show you a little trick if you ever see one at a swap meet, how to make 60 bucks real quick. So anyway, first you unplug it. Take out about a half a dozen 5.5 screws. So these little motors, you see this one, I've had this one apart recently, but you see these little motors right here. These motors are really bad about going out, especially on a higher mileage car. So if it's got less than 100,000 miles, odds are the little motor's all right in them. But you can't buy them anymore. General Motors doesn't make them. The people that made the actual clusters doesn't provide them, so you can't get them. If you ever see a cheap Corvette cluster that's burnt out, just rob this little thing out. 2 screws hold it in. Actually, take them out from this side. You see it's got the gear on that side. Made 60 bucks on eBay. You didn't hear that from me, though. People buy them all the time. It's a very common thing with a C4, especially 84 to 88. So, I'm going to give you a little lesson. Like I told you about hanging out with crooks. You learn things. And keep in mind, I don't condone any of this. I'm just showing you how easy this can happen. So you're telling me this vet shows 60,000 miles. Now keep in mind, I've owned this car for over 10 years. And let's say if it had a title and we ran the vet on it, which I almost ran a Carfax on it, but I was almost scared to. But let's just say for S&Gs we did. And the last mileage stamp was 60,000 miles. We say you can roll it back. Well, it don't just roll back. You know why? Because it's got these little clips right there that keep you from doing those shady things. Oh, it just fell off. So now you can take, did we say 60? I mean, it's pretty clean. It's classic, you know. Well, now it has 29,000 miles on it. But the Fox says the miles are right. I can stick this back in there, put it all back together, put my little stepper motor in. And now I got a low mileage C4 Corvette. No one's none the wiser. Now, and we're going to throw this in the trash. This is totally for demonstration purposes. The only C4 Corvette I have is my 88. It has 52,000 miles on it, by the way. You know, I want to show you that. To show you how easy and how simple that is. It's not rocket science. It's literally 5.5 millimeter, a pick. You could take that little bit of knowledge I just showed you and you can wind back the odometer on every 80s GM car and a lot of the 90s ones also. But what keeps other people from doing that? So that's where the detective comes in. You got to be that guy when you're looking at these cars. You got to think about it. You know, it's not late breaking news that the 80s and 90s cars are popular. You know, the C4 Corvettes are on the rise. Third gen Camaros are friggin' insane. Just like the one I was telling you about. This car come across my desk with 160,000 miles on it. It was a convertible. And there's one thing about the car that made it stick out. It had one of those tacky ass GT Grant steering wheels on it. Well, you know why I had a GT Grant steering wheel on it? Because the original steering wheel was probably all tore up. You got to think about it. Somebody had their dick grabbers on this thing for 160,000 miles. And the car's clean, but that steering wheel, you got to touch it. So it was probably tore up. So what did they do? They went down to AutoZone and bought them a damn GT Grant steering wheel stuck on it, which I hate with a passion, by the way. Fast forward, you know, a couple months. I didn't buy the car. Nice. But we went another direction. And this was the thing. This car was actually like up north somewhere and had been put up. And it wasn't rusty or anything like that. Fast forward a few months later, and I'm playing around on Facebook Marketplace. I'm literally on there every day. Locally. Within a 100-mile radius of me, and I'm not going to get too detailed, but within a 100-mile radius where we're at right now, boy, the cutest little bright red IROC convertible pops up. I mean, just cute as a button. I mean, get the IROC stripes, pretty top, you know, like I said, bright red paint, 350 odd mat tune port with 60,000 miles on it. I started scrolling through the pictures and it looks just like the one I looked at. But there was one thing. Had a nice new Camaro factory steering wheel on it. You know, those cars had the one that came around and had the horn button that came down like that. Just a good looking car. And I'm like, man. And I mean, this thing, I've been looking, I'm looking way up north and I found one within 100 miles of me. What are the odds? He actually, there's a picture of the VIN in the door on the sticker. I went into my trusty iPhone and that got me thinking, what are the odds of finding a bright red Camaro that looks identical almost to the one that I saw a few months back, but is everything I want now. And keep in mind, it's also 5,000 higher. So I go through my phone and I'm a screenshotter. I'm that guy. You know, I scroll through. I got 10,000 pictures on my phone. Just scroll, scroll, scroll. And I found my little Camaro where I sent it to somebody. And I look, and literally I screenshotted the VIN on it. You know, it was in the ad. It was the same damn picture. Not just the same VIN. This guy used the same picture. So you're telling me somebody put a $125 steering wheel that you can buy on eBay, look them up, and cut the odometer on it and had the clean Carfax. But there's one thing you can't beat, and something we didn't have in the 80s and the 90s. Not we. I say like we got a rat, like I got a rat in my pocket. I held 80s and 90s. I was a kid. The thing you got to understand though is we've got technology. We got that phone, and that right there is what gets you. And this is power. You know, it makes it a lot harder to get away with greasy things when you got just hard proof. And now, granted, it was just dumb luck how it worked out like this. But you got to keep your eyes open, guys. You got to think about it. You know, everybody for years thought, you know, oh, we ain't got to worry about this anymore because of technology. Well, now all of a sudden, those cars get popular again, and them old tricks become new. Guys, keep your eyes open. Good luck on all those sales. We'll catch you next time at Rabbit's Used Cars. And all the old school thing. All the nectar of the gods. Blacker than my ex-wife's heart. That's the way I like it.